can leave on time. I think it'll be better. Okay. So welcome to our workshop. My name is Rebecca. I'm from the Department of Linguistics and Modern Language Studies, and my research and teaching interest is in phonetics, phonology, and pronunciation teaching and learning. And I usually teach MA, TESOL program, postgraduate, PGDE, and also year 1 phonetics, phonology. Okay, so before I start my workshop, the introduction of the Copra, I would like you to just take a look at this poem. I guess most of my students already read this poem before, but I still like to invite you to look at this one again. Just read it silently, because I know we still have some latecomers. Okay, so anyway, just maybe you can just read it silently. Is it easy for you to read? You know, I take it already know, and then okay, C B T O U G H, B O U G H. Okay, and how to pronounce the sound? Others may stumble, but not you. Okay, thorough and through. Well done. Okay, so this is the first try, and then you will see how difficult it is. Okay, so let's listen.
I take it you already know of tough and bow and cough and dough. Others may stumble, but not you, on hiccup, thorough, slough and through. Well done, and now you wish perhaps to learn of less familiar traps. Beware of herd, a dreadful word, that looks like beard and sounds like bird. And dead is said, like bed, not bead. For goodness sake, don't call it deed. Watch out for meat and great and threat. They rhyme with sweet and straight and debt.
Okay, so maybe you can take a look at this line, because this line is the most difficult one. We have the same spelling, O-U-G-H, O-U-G-H, but how do you pronounce all these 4 sounds? Number 1 is tough and bow and cough and dough. Okay, good, because you listen once. So you can see same spelling but different sounds. Tough. Okay, so if you know IPA, you can take notes like this way: tough, bow, cough, dough. Okay, but if you don't know the IPA, you will try to listen and try to memorize the sound, right? So this is the only way maybe you can learn through this kind of whenever you encounter unfamiliar word, or like if you know phonics, you know O-U-G-H, could be could be R, but actually still have some other possibilities, right? Like this. One more. How about this one?
Hiccup, thorough, slough and through.
Okay, once again, hiccup, thorough, slough, through. Okay, it's good if you listen once and you can imitate, you can follow, but maybe after home, you forgot everything. So maybe you still need to take some notes, but how to take notes? So that's why, again, maybe IPA is one way, right? Okay.
Beware of herd, a dreadful word that looks like beard and sounds like bird.
Okay, E-A-R, E-A-R. How do you pronounce E-A-R? Be aware of herd. Okay, that looks like beard. Okay, E-A-R, E-A-R. Actually, they have different pronunciation. Beard, herd, bird. So different letters for the next to her, E-A-R, I-R. They pronounce the same sound. Herd, bird. So it seems that it's not really letter sound, correspondence. So this is the problems. Okay. Okay, next one, D-E-A-D. How do you pronounce D-E-A-D? D or dad? D-E-A. D-E-A-D, dad, okay?
Dead it's said, like bed, not bead. For goodness sake, don't call it deed.
Okay, so it's very confusing because we learned that E-A could be E or E. Okay, but in this case, bead, E-A, bead, okay. But D-E-A-D, is it deed? No, right? D-E-A-D should be dad, okay. So it seems like it's really hard to predict the sound if you don't know the word, if you never learn the word. Okay, so, but B-E-D, bad, okay. So watch out for...
Watch out for meat and great and threat. They rhyme with sweet and straight and debt.
Okay, once again, E-A, E-A, E-A. Meat. Okay, this is the first good guess. E-A-E, meat. But how about G-R-E-A-T? Great, A is long A. But the last one, T-H-R-E-A-T. Thread, it tends to be another sound. Okay. So MEAT, meat. Okay, so and great, A, and THREAT, thread, 3 different sounds, right? E, A, F. Okay, so so you can see a different kind of composition or different kind of sound letter correspondence or not really inconsistent, right? So same letters but different sounds like tough, bow, but different letters but same sounds like her or bird. So letter sound relationship in English is not always regular and predictable. So that's why I'm saying that phonics is a very good way to learn how to read in primary school, but it seems that it's not that reliable, according to the previous examples I showed. So what do you think? English pronunciation is difficult? I think it should be yes, so you are here, right? Okay, so we are trying to find some way out. So this workshop, the first of all, I talked about pronunciation teaching. And the second, corpus linguistics and teacher education, since most of you are in the education program and also in service teachers. So I think it will be good to introduce corpus linguistics to you. And then we will introduce some corpora, and then I think the most important part is how to make use of the corpora to work out our pronunciation. And then provide examples, so that is also a very important section. How to use learner corpora in 2 level in my teacher training programs, like BA and BEd or MA program. I can introduce what I'm really have done in these 2 programs. And finally, I provide some sample lessons for school teachers. And it's good to bring back to your school to share with your colleagues, and I think that will be good for you. So the first one I would like to introduce. So I want you to think these 3 questions. Do you teach pronunciation? Since we have only 2 or 3 in-service teachers, maybe yes, maybe not. I think you should have to some extent, should have some components in your English lesson, right? And do you enjoy? Or actually, according to research, some teachers, especially for non-native speakers, we don't feel very confident in teaching pronunciation because we don't have the so-called native accent. We are afraid that we will, contaminate students' pronunciation. But do you think that teacher can really do well for pronunciation teaching? Do they really know learners' difficulties? Do you really know, what kind of strategies the learners can use? Actually, you and me, we are advanced English learners, for sure. That's why we are here. We are very advanced English learners. We are very successful language learners. We got a lot of good experience. I think it's good to share with our students, our learners, according to our experience, right? How to improve our pronunciation. Okay, so here I want to just point out 2 things. First one, what is the goal of pronunciation teaching and learning? And the second one, what pronunciation features are important to teach? So I want you to think about this. Of course, if you want to take DSE, you need to take the teaching, speaking test. You need to attend IELTS level 7.5. I think we should try to be the so-called native-like, right? But if you want to, actually, some of the students finish their secondary school. Maybe they go for business sector. They work in the restaurant. Maybe their pronunciation we don't really aim that high because it's not easy to achieve the so-called native life, right? So here we usually we say that some research say that actually for non-native speakers, especially for adult learners, or past the critical period, after the puberty, after in secondary or adult learners, we should achieve the so-called intelligible accent. But it should be comfortable. Comfortably, we hear very comfortable, okay? Intelligible accent. But what is intelligible accent? What is intelligible accent? So here we have 5 features. If you find that your students have a problem like this, number 1, for example, if the students say 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, or it's enough, it's in love. If this kind of pronunciation, I think that will be the feature. I think we need to help learners to to correct the pronunciation. Number 2, consonant cluster. Consonant cluster means at the initial or in the final position, they have 2 or more than 2 consonants. For example, P-R-A-I-S-E, praise. If you say pace. I like it. Okay, praise, pace. This kind of situation we call consonant cluster, but we delete the one sound. Oh, yeah, okay, so we call this deletion. Yeah, deleting consonants from initial consonant. Or my fan, you are my fan, or you are my friend, or your friend, or my fan. This kind of situation, I think we need to correct our students' pronunciation. It will affect our intelligibility. We couldn't understand what you said, okay? And the second one probably is like this kind. Spot, say sibat, sidela, okay? Or messy, fancy. You try to insert some sound, okay? Like here, sibat, you insert a vowel, right? Like here, spot, or stella, sidela. Okay, so this kind of problem, I think teachers need to help our students to correct pronunciation like this. And then, for example, like a vowel length, leave, live, or sit, seat, shit, sheet. Okay, this kind of problem, confusion between long and short vowels, and also like word stress. For example, how do you pronounce the first word? Important. But if you miss stress on the first part, it tends to be impotent. So the meaning is totally different. And that's the problem. It will really affect our intelligibility. Okay? And the last one, like tonic words. What is tonic words? Misplace of the word in a tonic unit. In the one sentence, for example, if I want to, my name is Rebecca. If I put a stress on my name is Rebecca, it should be different from my name is Rebecca or my name is Rebecca. Actually, they have different kind of meaning behind. If you put a stress on the different, for example, if I put a stress on, usually we will put the stress on the last word. My name is Rebecca. Rebecca should be put a stress here. But if you put a stress on my, not you, my name, not your name. So we put stress on this part. So they will, again, they will cause some miscommunication. Okay, so here, reflection. Are these all typical pronunciation problem for Chinese students? Yeah, maybe you agree. How about Hong Kong, mainland? Do you have a similar, in your hometown, the students, do you have the similar problems like this? Maybe yes, maybe not. But this is general problems we can observe. Okay, so but we can find more. Actually, not only for this, we should have some other more, right? So yeah, we can think about this. But at least these 5, we call this top 5 important features to teach. So as a teacher, we will say how the way to enhance, how can we enhance our knowledge? Or whenever we feel doubt, we don't know how to pronounce the word, how can we do? Of course, textbook, dictionary, internet, corpus. What is corpus? Actually, I think some of you already done my survey in the pre-workshop. Actually, I want to know your background, and I was thinking how I to prepare for this workshop. So the second question, I think some of you respond to this questionnaire. I found that among these 16 responses, 7 out of 16 use pronunciation textbook, and 9, phonics textbook, and paper dictionary. I think this is the most popular one. Use the online dictionary. Actually, I also use this kind of strategies. Just use the mobile phone or use your computer. Just check the Cambridge online dictionary. I think that's the most easiest way, or more feasible way. But you can see, how about corpus? Wow, 8 never, and only 1. Usually, I think maybe because you are my students, you are not, taking my course. But basically, this is a more rare, tool teachers will use. So that's why you are here. So let's share. I'm trying to develop some materials based on some corpus and see whether it is feasible or not. So that's why you are here, right? So, but do you think this is really good to use online dictionary? Is there any limitation? I think this is the most popular one. I always encourage our students to use this dictionary. But for example, now let's try one word. For example, pronunciation. How do you pronounce the word? Is it pronunciation? Pronunciation? Usually in Hong Kong we will say pronunciation. Pronunciation is quite common. Pronunciation. So okay, let's listen. Let's check. Okay, and then very often we don't know how to pronounce the word, and then we listen, right?
Pronunciation.
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 Pronunciation. Let's look at the UK accent.
Pronunciation. Pronunciation. Pronunciation.
Pronunciation. Pronunciation.
Okay, no matter you follow American accent or British accent, if you have your ears very sensitive, you know that is pronunciation. Pronunciation. But I guess some learners still follow her own, perception, pronunciation. No matter how many times they listen.
Pronunciation.
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 Pronunciation. They would still, pronounce the same based on their own perception because they see the letter O there. O is there, of course, pronunciation. But actually, if you look at IPA, if you look more carefully for this A, P, and then R here. So there are three sounds here, P, R. And then the number 3 is not O, it's a symbol like this one. We pronounce pronunciation. So if you use this kind of audio file and then you can listen, you can get the meaning, you can get the sound, and you can imitate it, that's good. But we should cater for learner differences. Not all the learners know or can perceive the differences. And if you also stress on this part, P, R, P, R, they will realize initial part there are 2 sounds. Pronunciation, not po. You cannot delete R, right? And letter O is not pronounced O. It's not pronunciation, it's pronunciation. Okay, so again,
Pronunciation.
Pronunciation.
so IPA is a good strategy to extra help learners to fine-tune their pronunciation. Okay. And Corpus is another way to, again, raise learners' awareness. Okay, so let's see. So here is the model or framework I try to develop. Learning, teaching should be interactive, right? The first part, especially for second language acquisition theory, how to noticing error, I think it's very important. How to raise students' awareness. Because students, they never know that they pronounce incorrectly. We need to point out the errors or help them to self-identify, discovering the errors. I think that's quite important. Okay, so noticing, discovering, this is the key terms in this kind of corpus learning. So of course, we usually have a learning, if they know their own pronunciation error, that'll be fine. If not, usually we will try to get the help from teachers to give them explicit feedback. So usually in the teaching part, explicit instruction is very important. You give them very clear, articulatory, perceptual explanation, and listen to authentic, native speaker speech. I think that's good. And then, of course, we will do some follow-up, more control practice, like minimal pairs, to differentiate the sounds, or like word reading aloud, or sentence listening, repeat, this kind of practice. And then we can have a less control practice, like storytelling, picture description, and so on. But no matter which stage, we need to give them some feedback, right? And then, of course, we can have provide some checklist, for example, and then we can check. We'll see whether they get any improvement. If yes, great. If not, we go back to explicit instruction. So in this framework, I think it's not that new, but I just want to highlight this part. We are not only to listen to authentic native speaker speech, but also non-native speakers. Because it's very often we will invite students, classmates, to read a sentence. And then if the student is really poor in their language, and usually classmates will make fun of them. your pronunciation is so poor, it's so funny. How do you pronounce pronunciation? So, but if you use the corpus, you don't ask your students to read aloud in front of class. You use the learner's corpus. I think they will easier to identify people's pronunciation. Compared with, it's hard to identify your own pronunciation, but it's easier to identify someone's pronunciation error. So this is the rationale why we want to develop this kind of corpus pronunciation teaching. So noticing, discovering, these are the key terms and how to integrate it to this kind of pronunciation teaching and learning framework. Okay, so the second part is corpus linguistics and teacher education. What is corpus? I found that according to our survey, everybody knows what is corpus, so I don't want to go into the details. And for CAL, computer assisted learning, for all this, I think everybody knows this. And the other term we call data-driven learning, DDL. Okay, so this is another for corpus learning. We learn some language through analyze the language by ourselves, and then we can find the patterns. I think this is the idea for data-driven learning. And then like GUT 2005 claims that corpus-based learning could motivate students to speculate about language structure. So I think that's very important. Students need to speculate about language structure and develop their own ability. We call it phonological awareness, prosodic awareness, right? And they discover the pattern and use authentic language data. So this is the idea. And corpus-based approach not only provide teachers with the various teaching materials. If in one pre-workshop questionnaire, some student asked me whether students need to learn corpus. My answer is no, but teachers need to know. Because I think you are primary or secondary school, especially for primary school teachers. I think it's too difficult for primary school kids to learn corpus. But teachers, teachers should know different kind of corpus, and then you try to develop some materials for our students. I think that's the rationale why we offer this kind of workshop. Okay, and then through this kind of discovery, we can help to shift teacher center to student center. I think this is also very important idea. Okay, so next part, we'd like to talk about spoken learner corpus. Usually, spoken learner corpus is a database which incorporates speech audio files with text transcription and different level of annotation for different purposes. Usually we have read aloud or spontaneous speech. Usually we have two kinds. Okay, so but usually learner corpora, for the current data-driven learning studies, we can find more native speakers corpora, because we usually feel like we need to learn native-like accent, right? So usually there should be the native speakers corpora. We try to learn through that. But relatively fewer studies have investigated learner corpora. So we should see what's the value of the learner corpora. Let me show you. GUT 2005 argued that a comparison between native and non-native data is beneficial to language learners because it can enable them to notice the typical errors of learning English and develop their abilities to identify the differences between native and non-native speakers. Okay, so research showed that this is really effective to do the comparison between native and non-native, and then learners to notice the typical errors. Okay, and then she also concluded that using learner corpora in the classroom is better than use native corpora because of this. I think you can read it by yourself. I don't want to read it. I just want to show you some research tell us that native speakers corpora is good. But we can look at different angle, different perspective. If we use a learner corpora, we can. There are some other benefits, right? For example, by observing the most frequent typical errors of learners, students may become more aware of the features of their own interlanguage, and possibly stimulate a restructuring of their own language use and knowledge. Okay, so this is the research evidence. Okay, so corpus-based data-driven learning can be beneficial to both students and teachers, and you can provide opportunities for students to identify language pattern and pronunciation features on the basis of authentic data. And you can erase language awareness and teacher awareness, and provide more teaching resources. I think it's a very important part. Provide more teaching resources and learning activities for teachers. So through this kind of, you play some learners' copra, especially for Hong Kong accent or mainland accent, and then you can have some classroom discussion, see what's going on for this accent, what's going on for the error. Do you find any errors, any inappropriate pronunciation? And then they can do some through someone's pronunciation, it can reflect on their own. I think that's the idea. And then they can have some, not only student, also teacher reflection on their own pronunciation and teaching. Okay, so I think all the above is kind of research evidence and some rationale why we are here, why we want to introduce corpus. So here today I would like to introduce 4 different corpora. The first 2 we call it international corpora. The number 1 is speech accent archive, and the second one we call international dialects of English archive. And these 2 made by very prestigious, scholars overseas. And the number 3 and number 4 are these 2 are the corpora I compiled. So the first 2, I just want to share with you why we need to know more about the accents from all over the world. So here, these 2, I would say that the traditional listening test or learning task, including usually only standard American accent, usually in our like IELTS. Usually only standard or TOEFL, right? Or in our exam paper, we usually set up the standard American accent. But our team proposed we should use varying the accent used in the listening task, because English is an international language. Actually, nowadays we have international test we call TOEIC for business purpose. They have one session, a listening task. Actually, there's the task with different kind of accent from all over the world. The reason why we want to put these 2, because with different English accents representing the task we design would reflect the variety of English. Like, for example, in Hong Kong, not only Hong Konger here, we have some minority students. We can see some Filipino helpers or some workers or people doing business here. So I think our students also need to know. We don't need to imitate their pronunciation, but we need to know and should know the features of their pronunciation, and we should try to understand. We couldn't force them to correct their pronunciation, but we should adjust our ears, right? We should know how to understand. And then maybe you're a student after they graduate from your school, and then they don't want to go they want to go overseas for study. They also need to learn the accent. They should understand. Or they do the business in Hong Kong or working in a restaurant. They also need to take orders, right? Maybe the customers are from different area of the world. Okay, so the tasks we design reflect the variety of English that listeners would like to be exposed to, both in learning English and hearing it spoken in the international workplace. Okay, so the first one we want to introduce, this one, the first one we call Speech Accent Archive. This is a large set of speech samples from a variety of language backgrounds, so from all over the world actually. And native, non-native speakers of English read the same paragraph. So this corpus, they use the same paragraph, and different speakers use just pronounce the same paragraph, read the same paragraph, and they carefully transcribe with IPA. So what is IPA? This is IPA. I'm not sure how many of you learn. I think my students, of course, you know IPA. Can you try number 1? What's this? E. Okay, good. And how about this one? A. Okay, how about this one? O. Okay, not bad. How about this one? Okay, so if you want to know more about the corpus, actually, because they need to do some annotation. So this is a basic. You should know this table. What does it mean, or the sound, how to pronounce the sound. Okay, so this is the corpus. Okay, this is the archive. So for this archive, they have a search function. So maybe if you have mobile phone, if you have any device, you can use this one. You have the handout, and you can go. But because we have 4 corpora, I won't lead you to go into the details, but just introduce this one for you. You can go to this website, and it's easy to access. You know, they have how to browse, search resources about. For example, search sample. You can see this is the paragraph. Please call Stella. Have you ever heard this one? No, never? So let's listen. So basically, this is the same paragraph. And then they invited different speakers from all over the world to read the same paragraph. Okay, let's listen.
Please call Stella. Ask her to bring these things with her from the store. 6 spoons of fresh slow pea, 5 thick slabs of blue cheese, and maybe a snack for her brother Bob. We also need a small plastic snake and a big toy frog for the kids. She can scoop these things into 3 red bags, and we will go meet her Wednesday at the train station.
Okay, can you guess what is this accent? Where is this speaker? Where is this speaker from? Is it Hong Kong? No, I don't think so.
Please call Stella.
Please call
Ask
Stella.
her to bring these things with her from the store.
Actually, this is from Indian accent. But I think this is pronunciation quite good, quite clear,
A snack for her brother Bob.
but it's
We
intelligible.
also need a small plastic snake and a big.
Okay, so just like I said, whenever we design the lesson or the task, usually we use the native speakers one. But you know, just like I said, English is international language. It's very possible for learners to encounter this kind of accent on the street or in your business, in your workplace. Okay, so let's look at this archive. So the first of all, you can search language. Okay, search language. For example, you can search Cantonese. Yeah, in this corpus we have Cantonese. You can search like sex, male, female, or you can search like you know, the search again like Cantonese speaker, male, female, right? Male, Hong Kong, China. We have 3 in this database. And then you can also search, you know, place of birth, like Beijing, okay, and China, Guangdong, different province, okay, in China here, right? So we can specify the city, the province, the state, or country. And not only for Chinese one, of course, you can find Japanese and Irish, actually all over the world, UK, Singapore, Philippines, okay, all this. And after that, you can search, for example, you just search one, okay, this is China, Hong Kong, native speaker of Cantonese, and then she also know French and Mandarin, right? And then she studied English when she was at the age of 3, and then now she's 26 years old, right? So you provide this kind of bio data, and then you can free download this recording, right? And then they also show the IPA transcription here. But if you look at it very carefully for this IPA, you will see we call it narrow transcription. They have very, very detailed IPA transcription. I think for laymen or for teachers, maybe we don't really need to have this kind of such a detailed IPA transcriptions. We can have more broad IPA transcription, should be okay. But you still need to know a little bit about the vowel chart, for example, because when you try to search vowels, for example, you want to know someone whose pronunciation have some fronting problem. So what is fronting? What is backing? So we should refer to this. Actually, it's not a very big, you know, complicated concept. No, you just know this. We call it vowel chart. In this vowel chart, and for example, they have some fronting problem like U to E. So this is front part. And this is back part, right? Okay, so fronting means you may mispronunciation from O to A or a little bit frontal, or another one like raising. I think this is more common for Chinese learners. We usually have some problem with raising, like cake to kick, A to E. So we call it raising from A to E. So from this position to to the upper position. We call raising. So I like this cake. I like this cake. Some confusion between these two sounds. Or O to U, or like A to A, or to E. So if you know IPA, I think it's good to make use of this kind of concept, and you can search. But again, I will feel that you really need to have some level of phonetics background. Otherwise, it's a bit difficult to use this one. But I think it's still good if you don't really want to research like raising, vowel, or consonant. But at least you can just download the listening, the recordings, and do some listening activities for your students. Okay, so the following, I would like to invite my student, my EDD student, Chen, to introduce how I think the most important thing for teachers, how can we make use of this kind of corpus, right? Because we have a different kind of accent. We can find some from China, from India, from mainland, from all France. But how can we make use of, if we know IPA, we can really use the pronunciation, correction or exposure for this. But I think it's also good to do listening activities. Okay, so shall I pass this to Chen? Yeah.
I would like to ask a question first. Do you think we have more native speakers who speak English nowadays, or do we have more non-native speakers?
Non-native speakers.
Yeah, non-native speakers, right? When according to Jenkins, when we communicate with when a non-native speaker communicates with another non-native speaker who have the different first language with him or her, it will be easier for them to it will be easier for them to communicate unsuccessfully. So giving students chances to get access to different accents of English is really important. Based on the speech archive, we can design different listening tasks and to cultivate students' perception ability. Generally, we have two kinds of listening tasks. The first one is the gist listening task, and the other one is the specific information task. This one is there are two types of the gist information task. Summary in spoken or written form. The other one is the multiple choice. So do you remember what's the passage about the Stella passage?